right, hi everyone. Welcome back to part two. Joining me once again is our inaugural Euros Championship winner, Mike Sheehan. Hi, Mike.
Hey Ben, how's it going?
Hi, doing very well. This is going to be our commentary of the finals game, the second game of the grand finals, in which you, Mike, ended up claiming the championship title. All gameplay footage from this video is courtesy of Neo Red and Grid, which has been diligently covering all major events in the UK for the past umpteen years. If you want to check out more of their coverage, including the entire Euros coverage, do visit and support their channel. But for now, we'll give you the commentary that you also very well deserve. Before we start off, let's just give a bit of setting for those of you who weren't aware of how the championship went. Mike, you came in from the winners bracket, is that right?
Yes, I did indeed. So I was 15th seed coming into top 16, and I won the 4 in a row to get to winners bracket, or winners side.
Yeah, very much a dark horse indeed, coming from the bottom half of the top 16 and then working your way to the to the finals. So in your game one, your Siphon Apocalypse Wizard deck faced against the runner-up, who was Laurie Porter, playing Moonspam, and you ended up losing.
Yes.
We won't really get into the game, but it was, you tried to get some keyhole runs in, you tried to win early, but you didn't, your plan failed, and he just scored out later. So how were you feeling going into game two?
I was pretty nervous, being honest. So what I would say at the outset is I did not know what Laurie's build was. I kind of assumed that if it was a Reg Wizard, it would have 2 Arons, which I later discovered it didn't have. And because of the way I played in the first game, I don't want to say I was tilted. I was kind of on edge, though, because I made a huge mistake in not checking a second tech startup. So I spent most of the first game trying to calm myself and say, look, you've probably lost this, but if it goes to game 2, just trust in the deck.
Yes, put your heart in the cards. That's always what we do. So yeah,
yes,
that's a pretty fine mindset to enter game 2 into. So as you mentioned, you weren't very clear on Laurie's deck, and yeah, it turns out that Laurie's deck was very, very unprepared for this particular sync deck. So apologies for spoiling for everyone who hasn't watched this yet, but basically Laurie gets brutally murdered because this was an incredibly sync favored matchup. I imagine there are very few alternate universes where you would lose to sync, so even before the series began, when I was watching this from the sidelines, I kind of knew that you were going to win. Nonetheless, that being said, to succeed in tournaments like you did, you have to win a lot of games, and to do that, you must exercise good play in all of them. So, especially in the more even matchups, which I'm sure you faced throughout the day. So, in this commentary, we'll actually walk through some of your decision-making processes that allow you to win this entire tournament. So, all right, let's get into the video. Here we go. Okay. So you start by drawing an opening hand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember, your opening hand was 2 booms, 2 breaking users, and a pop-up window, and you ended up choosing to mulligan it. So why was that?
Yes, this was a really tough decision.
It was. I could see you agonizing over it.
Yeah, I spent a long time in the tank on this one. So the 2 breaking news are exactly what you want to see really early. I just didn't want to see both of them at once.
Exactly.
If I had maybe a more taxing piece of ice, maybe more like if I had economy, for example, instead of 2 booms, this would have been an instant keep. But as it transpired, I didn't. So I felt like I made the risky play in the first game, right, by installing a keyhole and going down to 0. That was like in chess it would be sharp, right? It's a sharp opening. That was my sharp line of play there. This one, I didn't think I could take a sharp line of play again. So yeah, I decided to play it safe and mulligan. I could have mulliganed into a worse hand, but no. I mulliganed into what I think was an IP block, sweeps, hedge, and maybe a breaking news as well.
I think you had a couple of booms as well. I
Yeah,
believe you found
yeah.
both
I
booms early.
actually, you're correct. I did. I did have a boom. Yes. So the mulligan was fantastic.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think I would have kept in your position and I would have been dead wrong because I agree, your mulligan hand was way, way better. I mean, the game's playing out right now. We saw your opening was IP block HQ followed by double economy. So you're straight up 13 credits, threatening hard hitting news right away on turn 1. That's really good.
yes, yes, that is. Having a strong credit lead or differentiation is really important for the deck. Just because the ability to threaten hard hitting news is kind of a cornerstone for it actually, and something that a lot of runners didn't necessarily respect throughout the tournament. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And it helps a lot that current Reg Wiz builds don't run Employee Strike. They used to for a while, but now that they don't, it means that they can't necessarily clear tags as easily as they used to. Having moved to currents that help defeat Moon Spam, which are pretty much blank against Sync. So Laurie
Yeah.
had a rather decent economy start as well, but because of that hard-hitting news threat, he couldn't afford to run R&D turn 1. And I'm not sure why you top deck here. It might have been a break. It looks like it was the breaking news actually that you top decked.
It does, yeah, because it doesn't look like I shuffled my hand after
Yeah.
drawing from R&D there.
That was like a
So
knee jerk. Ooh, two advanced agenda. Let's score it, and you showed it.
yes, yeah, and like the second the guys on the stream commentary saw the install in advance, they were like, "Oh, surprise, surprise! It's going to be a breaking news." But yeah, so it's I think it's really important to get. First of all, it's good for board state, right? To get the early breaking news scored because it sets you up, right? You're on the way, but it puts the pressure on immediately as well, right? Like the second you score that first one, your opponent knows I am on a clock here.
Yes.
Yeah.
The 24/7 boom clock, as we all so very well know.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Laurie is starting to actually amass really good economy. He did manage to find Gamble and Daily Cast, so now he can actually start contesting your R&D, and I think he's hemming and hawing here. He just injected a more, and he's thinking of doing a very big turn. Basically, for those of you who are not very familiar with Laurie's deck, he doesn't run Plascree, he doesn't run Aaron, so basically the only tech card in his entire deck against Sync is the Maw that we saw on the inject. Now, Maw is a very annoying card. I believe you would have played against it a couple of times during the day. How did you find playing against Maw?
I certainly did. And I was lucky in one respect. So my opponent in round 7, I believe it's 7, Jez, was playing what seemed like a fairly regular wizard deck with Maw as his console and also Rebirth. So by around turn 3, I think, he rebirthed into Eddie Kim, which is brilliant, yes, because he's got one link and he trashes so many operations. And now Jez, to be fair to him, played that game flawlessly. I had the 24/7 boom combo in hand, I would say 6 different times in the game. Every time he read the board state correctly, knew he had to get a Maw trigger, and he would either run HQ and trash as Eddie, or he'd run HQ, perhaps access Ice, and trash with Maw. And I conceded. It was the only game out of, 26 games that I conceded over the 3 days, but I just knew there was no way out.
That's nasty.
Yeah, so that game, I think, stood to me immensely in this game, because whenever I saw Maw hit, I knew that was not necessarily a win condition for Laurie, but certainly a way to turn off my win condition, and I had to stop it.
And in fact, during his first Maw trigger, as you saw just now when he dirty laundry into R&D, I believe he hit one of the 2 booms in your hand from the Maw.
Yes.
So the very next turn we saw you draw up a bunch. I think that's a very good way to actually counteract the problem of Maw. The more cards you have in your hand, the less likely it is that they hit key combo pieces.
Yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I was hoping to do was to draw a couple of different pieces of ice to give me options. So Laurie, if I remember correctly, saw a pop-up window on his access and R&D.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so I drew a couple of times, and if I remember correctly, that's a turnpike that I've installed on top of
that
there.
is a turnpike. Very good memory. Yes,
yeah.
That is a turnpike. So that's very that goes to show you that there's actually skill involved in piloting this deck. It's not about just drawing the correct combo pieces and winning. You drew very aggressively, click 1 draw, click 2 draw, and that allowed you to find the turnpike you needed to defend R&D. So well done there. That definitely deters further runs and basically makes the Maw install pretty useless now because he can't really trigger it. without getting into a lot of problems with your ice. Turnpike's a really nasty piece of ice to deal with as Wizard.
It is tremendous, yeah. So there's going to be a point later on where Laurie runs an R&D, and it's trace 5, right? So first of all, on the encounter, you're losing a credit, which, again, it's that wonderful encounter thing that NBN Ice does. But trace 5 is, first of all, a substantial trace. And then the question is, when you know that your opponent has potentially 3 QPMs in R&D, do you take the tag?
That is always such a tough question, yes.
Yeah.
You never want to donate them 3 points. So yeah, at this point, Laurie is just moneying up, respecting the hard-hitting news threat. This clearly shows that Laurie knows exactly what he's up against. Even though you haven't drawn the hard-hitting news yet, you kind of have to always respect that threat and play around it, which works very well in your favor. Because otherwise, you could be hemorrhaging cards from your centrals right now if he decided to just run.
Yeah. And I think there's maybe, I think I had 1 or 2 opportunities in the first 10 turns to hard hitting news him because he played really diligently, and he's an exceptional Netrunner player. I think really this came down to the fact that his deck was just really unprepared to face Sink in the cut, perhaps.
For sure, yes. And that's really unfortunate for him. It would have been nice to see him have a fighting chance, but, well, decisions were made. And yeah, the game continues. So now he's playing very aggressively on HQ, which I think is really good. He has a chance to hit the boom from your hand, and if he doesn't hit it, well, he might maul it. So now you review the pop-up and the dreaded IP block. So at this point, Laurie looks at his bin. I don't think there was a paperclip here, so he decides to let the trace fire. What was going through your mind here?
Yeah.
The trace?
So at this point, I have 12 credits. Laurie is on, I think, about 13. Okay, so my thoughts were, if I can get us to a point where our credit differential is minimal or I'm slightly ahead, then that's better for me. So it's the sunk cost thing, right? Where he's paid for pop-up window, he's hit the IP block. So I think I can boost this by 1 or 2, and he's probably going to pay into it. And sure enough, he did, because you don't want to, just wind up with a tag, have to jack out and clear it. So yeah, I boosted by 1, meaning that he had to pay 4 just to continue and get an access in R&D. So that brings him down to 9 credits now. And he really can't afford to be ending his turn around that. So I think he takes, there we go. Yeah, he takes 8 credits off of liberated accounts.
Yeah, everyone was laughing the way he took the money off.
Yeah, I just emptied it.
Yeah, and this is one of the moments where you got very, very lucky with the HQ access. You had 2 cards in your hand, a close accounts and a boom. Not only did he miss the boom on the HQ access, he also missed it on the maul. That's a 1 in 4 chance. So
yeah,
you got really lucky with saving the boom there. Although, as we'll see later on in the game, the luck kind of evens out. So yeah, we'll talk about that more later. But what we see here is you frantically drawing up, again, padding your hand with other cards that are not boom, so that maul will be less effective. I really like this play here.
Yes.
And as you mentioned earlier, pumping the trace on IP block, I would have done the same. I was hoping you would, and you were doing a very good job of it. By pumping the trace, you take down his credit level. As long as you're rich enough to force him to pay more, bringing him down below 12 credits means that it's easier to die hard hitting you. So I really, really love that very subtle play, boosting the trace. Now we come on R&D. Laurie says, hey, HQ is too taxing. The pop-up is not good for me. Let's go on R&D. First thing he hits is probably the worst ice that he can ever hit, an Archangel.
Yes, it truly is. Yeah. So I know that Maw is integral to his game plan at this point. And Archangel is so taxing, particularly as you can see by the face-up card in his heap. Because Black Orchestra just doesn't break this for anything economical at all, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah. So really, really great Archangel there. Just about saved me. And then he continues and sees the bad news, which is that there's a turnpike behind it. Yes. Yeah. So, and this is great, right? This is his last run on R&D. For the rest of the game, he ignores it completely. And the reason he does is because the cost of running through there to just see 1 card, and potentially get a Maw trigger is really uneconomical for him.
Yes, and this is where we see the huge weakness of the Reg Wiz rig, where you are relying on York and data suckers with Mimic to get through R&D. That's a very high down payment rig. You need 3 clicks and 9 credits to install York Mimic Sucker. And you just don't have that tempo against Sync, not in at this stage of the game. So as a punishment, Laurie has to pay 6 credits for the Archangel Trace, 1
Yes, he
credit for
does.
the Turnpike Encounter, and he has to make a choice between Trace 5 and taking a tag. As we'll soon see, he'll end up taking the tag, which basically costs him another 3 credits to remove. So for a
Yeah,
rest
and
cost of
and
6 on your R&D, you tax him 10 credits? Seems pretty good.
yeah, and that is once. So I'll pay those 6 credits once, but he'll pay that 10 every time. Or as I said, he just won't run it for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and look, he got the second worst card in your deck. The 15 minutes. Oh dear, oh dear.
Yeah, that was really good news actually, because a 15 minutes is an agenda that, number one, I don't mind him stealing because I can take it back.
Yep.
But number two, it doesn't trigger Maw.
Doesn't trigger more. So good. Yeah, the only better thing that he could have hit was the Quantum Predictive. The Quantum Kitty will go to you, and suddenly 24/7 is alive and kicking. That would have been amazing. Remember that he's tagged from the Turnpike, so
Yes.
that would have been great. But no, 15 minutes is still pretty good, and he clears the tag, so that brings him down suddenly to 9 credits, even after taking an entire Liberated. So
Yes,
you're in
exactly.
very good shape right here.
So he goes down to 9 credits, and at this point, for clicks 3 and 4 this turn, he takes 2 more credits, bringing him back up to 11, which I think was probably the best play he could make, right? Because it disincentivizes. Now, I realize I'm lower on credits, but there's a possibility that I could play a couple of economy cards in hard-hitting news. This disincentivizes that.
Yep.
So again, just the exact right play from Laurie, I think. It's really hard to look at his play at any point here and say, I don't think he should have done that. It's all really, really solid.
No, given the situation, I think he did the best. He did exactly what he needed to do. And hey, look, second breaking news. The combo is live.
Yes, it is. And I've played against Sync enough times that you need to make a decision. So I had a number of games against Sync. I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 as Wizard, and I think I won all but one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Yeah, I don't think anyone beat me as Sync. And I think the key is to know when to flip the switch where you go tag me.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
Yeah. So, for example, in one of the games against, I think Rasmus, he was also playing the Sync Hill deck, and I had an opportunity to keyhole quite aggressively. Now, it brought me down to 6 credits, and I thought, you know what? I can do it. I'll go down to 6. If he hard-hitting uses me, it's okay. And the reason it was okay is because I had Siphon and 2 Dejas in my hand,
Yes.
and there was already a Plascrete on the table. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take these keyhole accesses while I can, and then when the opportunity arises, I will Siphon him into the ground.
That's a very good point. Of course, your Siphon Keyhole deck is a lot more effective at flipping the switch, because with Siphon you can bring them out of boom range, and with Keyhole you can ensure quick victory. Laurie does not have access to any of that at all, so flipping the switch for him was definitely not an option. What he could do, however, was to maximize his more triggers, which I think was a very legit play. So he went for HQ here, accessing an archive memories and trashing an irrelevant data Raven, I think. Yep.
Yes, it was a Raven, yeah. I was quite relieved actually that he didn't trash the archive memories, just because of the utility of that card, being able to take so many important combo pieces from the bin should they get trashed.
Oh yeah, it's possibly the best card in your deck, one that you're never upset to see.
Agreed, yeah.
It could be anything. It could be anything you wanted. So okay, here we have a very interesting play. You click one Drew, and that click one draw drew you into Jackson Howard. You immediately slammed it on the table and drew another 2 cards to discard.
Yes.
So walk us through your thought process behind making this play here.
So I would say anybody who has played Sync for any reasonable amount of time will know that right now you are drawing like crazy for those 2 key cards. So at this point, I think I have a boom in hand still. Yes, I do. I still have a boom in hand. So I really want to see the 24/7. There's 2 of them in the deck. I'm looking at it thinking there's probably a little under 30 cards left. So every time I click Jackson Howard, I have a reasonable chance of seeing one of those two magic 24/7s. So yeah, just drawing up. Also, I was hoping to see another piece of ice. So I wanted to go 3 ice deep on HQ because that is where he was still focusing his runs to get those maw triggers. And I knew if I could shut off maw triggers, that I would be in a much stronger position. So yeah, I'm looking for another piece of ice at this point as well. But if the 24/7 comes first, all the better.
Yes, I think you identified your key weakness in HQ. That's quite important because all the time that he was getting HQ accesses, he was getting basically 2 shots every HQ run at getting your boom. One from the HQ run itself, one from Maw. So sealing that off ASAP was a very good choice, one that you consciously made. So as we talked about, your main win condition at this point is 24/7 boom. Were there any other win conditions running through your head, or were you just tunnel into finding 24/7?
Yeah, the main focus was 24/7, right? No, I would say it was 24/7 boom. The other win condition I'm potentially considering or hopeful for is if I could get 24/7 closed accounts into hard-hitting news, which is a fantastic combo. Because if you land them with 6 tags, it's a tempo hit that essentially no runner deck can afford to take to try and clear them. So once the runner decides that they're going to float tags, you have a lot of outs. So any boom is going to win it for you. Any archive memories, if you have a boom in the bin, is going to win it for you. And then the other great win condition, and I think what really brings this deck from being great to an exceptional corp deck is the exchange of information, right? Or the mythical exchange of information, archive memories, exchange of information playing.
It happens. Never
it does.
So
yes.
Yeah, your pop-up window gets parasited here, and he now sees the thing that's about to go on HQ if he fails to maw it, and he fails to maw it. He gets something else. I don't remember what this one was, but I think it was pretty irrelevant.
Yes, I can't recall exactly what was mawed away. You know what, actually? I think possibly an exchange of information. At one point, an exchange goes in the bin anyway.
Yeah, you might be right about that. So
yeah.
At this point, I guess that gets shut off a bit. You still have archive memories for it. Anyway, back to what you said. You were thinking about icing up HQ. So click 1, you draw. Hopefully you find the 24/7, but you don't. So the next best thing you can do here: pay 1 credit, get the ice on HQ, and then take 1 credit, landing you exactly at 4 credits. So they can rest the Raven. Very well planned out there. You knew that you needed only 4 credits to rest the Raven, so you could actually afford to spend your first click drawing.
Yes, exactly. Again, so get as many options as possible. In my earlier Netrunner days, I wasn't as good at planning out a full turn, right? This idea that you think, okay, maybe take a couple of credits, and then, drawing last click, which is about as bad a thing as you can do. So I drew up, knowing that really 4 credits was the magic number for 2 reasons. 1, because I could res the Data Raven, but 2, because 4 is that credit number that he needs to respect for the 24/7 boom combo.
Yes, that's a very good point as well. He needs to know, as long as you have 4 credits, he has to know that the combo could be live anytime from now. So, yes, well spotted.
Yes.
And yeah, having just seen the Raven from HQ, he basically knows that it's a Raven on HQ and that there's no point running into that. Speaking of which, last turn Laurie possibly made the worst possible mistake in his life. He decided to install John Masnori. Goodness knows why, I have no idea. Against Sync, where clearing a tag is something that you need to do. John Masnori is probably the worst possible thing he could have installed. I understand he needed tempo on his runs, but in this scenario, the only way that he can viably get through Data Ravens is to parasite them down. And he can't parasite them without first phase checking into them, which means taking a tag for ending the run. You don't want to run through a Raven the normal way. You want to end the run, jack out, and then drop a parasite on it. So Laurie basically holding himself to a corner here, basically saying, I can't run HQ.
Yes. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think in Laurie's position, I probably would have done the same thing. And it's because of that word that you said, it's tempo, right? So if he can get a card draw each turn without having to, dedicate to actually clicking it. I think that's definitely a positive thing for him. Also, I think he's reasonably confident that there is nothing that will hard stop him from making a successful run. So sure, he might have to take a tag from a data raven, but he knows he can get in if he wants to. So it's definitely a tricky one. That is probably an inflection point for him where he can go one way or the other. Yeah, I think I probably in his shoes would have installed the John Masanori as well. It is a risky play though.
It is. I mean, especially knowing that there's a Raven in the bin, you know that the deck runs 3 Ravens, you know that there's an Archive Memories in their hand. To me, it just doesn't really add up. But in either case, what we're about to see is a little... probably the only questionable play I see from you this entire game, which is install a pop-up window on HQ on your last click, putting you on 2 credits. So what was your thinking behind this line of play?
Yes. So this was the decision for me, right? I could go one of 2 ways here, and I wanted to further disincentivize the HQ runs. I thought 2 stacked pieces of ice might do more to disincentivize that, considering he had John Masanori on the table. I thought, okay, there's more variables for him to consider if he does decide to run HQ. Maybe this will cause him to pause a little bit and not necessarily just hammer HQ straight away again.
Yep.
I was, however, very conscious that I was bringing myself down to a credit level where I couldn't afford to res both of the pieces of ice. And I wasn't 100% sure it was the right decision. Objectively, it was probably a mistake, but I got away with it.
Yep,
I was
you did.
a bit lucky there, yeah.
Yeah, so basically it is the threat of Data Raven that in this particular... this is a very specific scenario, but it is the threat of Data Raven ending the run that is the most problematic for Laurie in terms of getting accesses, because pop-up, you can just run through it a couple of times, doesn't matter. With Raven, the on-encounter effect means that he loses a click and 3 credits every single time. The trace means he has to pay an additional 3 credits. It's possibly the worst piece of ice to encounter, and he doesn't want to just bounce off it because of John Masanori. So in that situation, just the sheer fact that you had 4 credits and what seemed like a Data Raven HQ should be more than enough to deter him. You did not need the second pop-up there. That said, you did need to discard down at the end of your turn, and I imagine you had a lot of cards in your hand that you wanted to keep. So
yes,
that probably factored into your decision as well.
Yeah, so I believe at this point I have at least 2 agendas in HQ. There is a QPM, and there's also a global food at this point. Yeah. So my hand looks something like sweeps, QPM, boom, global food, and I want to say another piece of ice. I'm not entirely sure what the 5th one was. Do you recall?
Me neither. I can't really remember. On this HQ run, because he wasn't able to rest the Raven, he managed to get a QPM off it, and that was untagged, so he got the very crucial kitty off, which is never good for sync.
Yeah, so mistakes were made. Like, for sure, if I had not installed the pop-up window, he would have had to encounter the Data Raven, and that would have been a QPM in my score area.
Yeah. In
So,
your shoes, I would have dropped the pop-up window on Archives. I think that would have been probably the most reasonable line of play, because you are probably going to pitch agendas into Archives at some point, and a deterrence on Archives always helps. But no matter.
I considered that actually as well. Yeah, I really did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've iced Archives a lot throughout your days. The other interesting thing that you're doing is that you're drawing a lot during your turns. Like last turn and this turn as well, I think you draw at least 2, if not 3 cards on your turn between mandatory draw and clicks. So that's one way to play it. I think it's quite obvious why you would do that. You're trying to find the 24/7. Drawing is obviously the fastest way for you to get there. Now, did you consider hard-hitting news as a possible way to win the game without 24/7? Just drop a hard-hitting news and, click for credits every turn. And when you're richer than him, just drop a hard-hitting news. What do you think of that?
Yes, I was considering that play, and it's something that I actually decided against consciously. And the reason I did is because I thought in terms of which would be faster to achieve, the likelihood of me seeing the 24/7 was better. And there's 2 of each card in the deck, so I was definitely equally likely to see both of them, for example, right? But I was also conscious that, like, I've lost games in the past where I played too passively, right? And I saw that as being probably the more passive route to victory, whereas actively drawing and trying to get the 24/7 into my hand, as opposed to increasing my credit total, was me actively going after a victory instead of waiting for the victory to come to me.
Yeah, that is very true. I think in your position, I would have went with the money route, and I probably wouldn't have done as well as you did. The money route is good because if you click for credits instead of drawing cards, you give yourself more outs in your deck. From 2 24/7, suddenly you have 4 cards because your hard-hitting users are turned on as well. However, on the other hand, as you very rightfully pointed out, you don't want to give Recwiz time because once they have time to set up Data Sucker, York, they can start running through R&D, getting accesses, and most importantly, getting more triggers. So I think you end up making a very right call there. You needed to close out the game very quickly. And even though you didn't know that his deck didn't... Yeah, I mean, given that you didn't know his deck had no Plascrete, you were assuming that he might have Plascrete, you wanted to get the kill in before he drew it. So I think you played it very well right there.
Yeah, so that was something that I only discovered afterwards. So I had gone over to the FFG guys and they gave me the trophy in the playmat, which was really exciting. And then I came back and Laurie was like, so you know I'm on 3 rumor mill, right? Which I had no idea about. So I'm probably glad I didn't, because if I knew that he had no tech apart from Maw, I think I would have been maybe, I don't want to say complacent. I'd like to think I would have remained composed, but always thinking, look, he could have Plascrete, he could have an Aaron. It kept me playing as hard as I could.
Yeah, definitely. You were definitely on your toes there, and I think that worked out better for you. You otherwise, yeah, as I said, you might have gone for the credit play that I did. I would have rather playing slow and taking credits instead of drawing for your 24/7, and that might have ended up really badly for you if Laurie was able to assemble his rig. So, yep, yeah. Good on you.
So that turn just there, that is the turn where I can't remember what my mandatory draw was, but I know click 1 was 24/7.
Yes. And that was so awkward because you couldn't play 24/7 and boom, you were just 1 click short. So you had to wait for next turn.
Yes. So at this point, I have 2 global foods in hand, or I did until I discarded one. So at this point, I get a little bold and I think, you know what? I've sufficiently disincentivized running on HQ. I don't think he's going to get a Maw trigger this turn. I'm going to pitch the global food because I think this might be it.
And yes, he takes credits. This is it. I knew you won. Sitting at the back lines, I knew you had it. And that was the game. Very well played. You found the 24/7 and very rightfully deserved the victory. It was getting quite tight because you were starting to draw enough agendas to lose you the game. That is always a hairy situation with no Jackson in sight. But you managed to pull it off.
Yeah, I had only used 1 Jackson. So, like, if he, for example, hadn't run Archives and I had drawn a Jackson later, I might have been safer. But it was definitely a chance I was willing to take. The throwing away the GFI into the bin was maybe reckless. Maybe I'd go as far as reckless as opposed to just bold. But yeah,
I do it all the time. That's why I always ice Archives, because you always have agendas in the bin. And yeah, in the end, dropping the Irish flag on the table, a big win for Team Ireland.
Yes, yeah, we had a great group that came over. So we had, I think, 7 who came over for Netrunner, but we had maybe 3 or 4 who came over for Game of Thrones as well. And a couple of the Game of Thrones guys had the Irish flag, and they said, "Listen, put this on the table for the final." And I said, "Ooh, I'm not going to do that in case I lose too, because I don't want the flag to be there for that." But yeah, whenever I won the second game, they gave me the flag, and I said I'd try and get it on stream.
That's really great. You should have been running around with an Irish flag as a cape. But anyway, now that this win is something that you have right now under your belt, I guess everyone wants to know what's up next for you.
Yeah, great question. So we have regionals in Kilkenny in Black Hat Games, and that's on the 23rd of July. So I'm definitely going to do that. I'm really excited to try out some of the decks that came out of the US Nationals. So some really inventive stuff there. Also, I think Highwire made is it like an IG deck with moons? So very interested to try that out as well. And then the next big tournament will be Worlds in November because we typically don't get a nationals in Ireland. So we organize our own one maybe last year. So yeah, Worlds is probably the next really big thing.
Yeah, you got, I believe, what was the price? A free flight to Worlds, was it?
Yeah, free flight and free accommodation, and I also get a ticket, a first round buy, and something I think is really cool, which is a ticket for a friend of mine to play at Worlds as well.
Oh, that is such awesome stuff. Well done, and huge props to you. Totally deserve it. I guess you also get to design a card.
Yes, I do. So hopefully I'll be talking to Michael Boggs sometime in the near future. We'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, he's a really great guy, and we as well can't really wait. Yeah, we can't wait to see what you come up with. This should be really interesting. So, before we close off this video, any shoutouts to your mates?
Yeah, all of the guys who came over. So we had Daryl, Gary, and Peter from the north. And then Owen came from Cork, and then myself, Barry, and Mark. We were the three from Limerick, and honestly, Barry and Mark they were outstanding. They were there beside me for the whole tournament. Well, from day two onwards, and just like giving me support after games. Saying, "Hey, your opponent might have missed this trigger, or you shouldn't have done that," or just making sure that number one, I wasn't making mistakes, but number two, because I got really quite nervous, just keeping me on the straight and narrow and reassuring me that all I had to do, in Barry's words, was play my decks. Just play the decks.
Yes, very, very supportive team you have. And yeah, congratulations once again, a very well-deserved victory. And more importantly, I think really embracing the spirit of Euros and, putting Ireland on the map. I think that's a really great outcome of the Euros. And once again, big thank you to you for making it happen.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Right, and that's all we have for this commentary. It was a pleasure having you on mic. Till next time, everyone.